We got married later than most. I was 28 and she was 31, and that was 6 years ago. Before we met, we both lived pretty wild lives, so we didn't have much money. When we talked about getting married, we discussed our plans for having children and agreed that Megan would stay home with them until the youngest was old enough to start school. We both believed that having a full-time parent at home was crucial for a child's development, if we could afford it. That meant we had to save up enough to weather any tough financial periods. Megan needed to work full-time, and I had to pick up as much overtime as I could handle. I was accustomed to working double shifts on Clarice, getting off late on Saturday, and then working another 12 hours. It was paying off. We now owned our house outright and our savings were growing steadily. Recently, I thought we were getting close to starting a family. We wanted to have our first child before Megan turned 40 to ensure a better chance of conception. So, Thursday night's conversation caught me completely off guard. "Ethan, I want to talk about a trial separation," Megan said. I was stunned, so much so that I felt paralyzed. All I could manage was a bewildered, "What? If you've ever been dumped, you know the feeling. The person breaking up has everything figured out and is ready. The one getting dumped is left completely unprepared and disoriented." That was me, in that moment. My next response was equally profound. "Why, I just think we need a little time apart," she explained. "You have to admit, Ethan, you're not as romantic as you used to be and don't seem to appreciate me as much. You keep saying you're too tired to go out more than once a month. You don't make love to me as often as you used to, and frankly, you're putting on a bit of weight. Surely you'd agree that a short break could be good for us. How about a month? Then we can reassess. I'll stay at Clara's. Feel free to call me, but let's not see each other more than once a week. Any more than that wouldn't be much of a separation, would it? Just remember, Ethan, I love you very much, and I'm sure we'll be back to where we were before in no time. We'll make beautiful children together." With that, Megan stood up, grabbed her 2 suitcases, and headed for the door. "I don't have a say in this," I stammered. "I've made my decision, Ethan, please." "Megan, sit down." Reluctantly, she returned to her seat. "Who's he, Megan? Oh God, I knew you'd think that," she said, sounding exasperated. "I just told you I love you, Ethan. There's no one else. So there's no need to tap my phones, track me, or hire a private investigator. If you do any of that, I might see it as a lack of trust and reconsider our relationship." She tried to stand up again, but I grabbed her arm to keep her seated. "It's not fair, Megan. You've had days, maybe even weeks, to plan this speech and make your move, while I'm left blindsided. What's the gamble, Ethan?" Seeing the embarrassment finally appear on her face made me feel somewhat vindicated. "You realize, Julia, that you've just put our relationship in jeopardy with your unilateral actions. I've always treated you as an equal partner. I would never do something so drastic without discussing it with you first. What risk, Ethan? I love you, you love me. It's only for a month. If I miss you, I'll come back quickly." "What do you mean by contempt?" "I mean you haven't given me a chance to defend myself. We barely go out together because I work overtime on Clarace and Saturdays, which we agreed on to improve our financial situation. We don't make love as often because we've been married for 6 years and I'm always so stressed. I've put on weight because you offered me a supervisory position with extra pay, which has added to my stress. Can't we talk this through? Please stay so we can discuss it." "I'm sorry, Ethan. I promised Clara I'd go out tonight." With that, she grabbed her bags and headed for the door. All I could say was, "Just remember you're married, Megan." She left without another word. The next day, I went back to work at 10 a.m. with sandwiches made from a week's worth of bread. In the evening, I went to the 24-hour corner store for some supplies. When I got home after 11:30 p.m., the message light on my phone was flashing. It was Megan saying she missed me and thanked me for giving her some space without calling. I was starting to get frustrated, working my ass off to put 3 times as much money in the bank as she was while she enjoyed her social life. It was odd, I'd never been so easily offended before. Neither Megan nor I called each other on Sunday. By Monday, I went to my boss and told him I wouldn't be able to handle any overtime for a while. When I didn't reach out to Megan until Wednesday, she gave me a call. Feeling a bit guilty about my silence, I decided to visit Clara's house after dinner on Thursday. I brought a bouquet of flowers and a box of chocolates as a peace offering. Clara was Megan's best friend, divorced for a little over a year. I wasn't entirely sure why, but I had a hunch it might have had something to do with infidelity. When I arrived, Clara told me Megan was in the shower. I waited on the couch, and Clara took a seat next to me, much closer than I was comfortable with. I shifted away, but she followed. Just then, Megan came downstairs. I handed her the flowers and chocolates. Our conversation was awkward, far from our usual easygoing chats. After some strained small talk, she asked, "Did you need something, Ethan?" I was taken aback by the question. "No, I just came to ask if you'd go out with me tomorrow night." "Sorry, Clara and I already have plans." "Wait, tomorrow's Claret." "You know I work Claret nights." "I quit," I said. I decided to focus on my family and my health. When I got your text at 11:30 last Saturday, saying you were going out, I realized I was being an idiot, working myself to death. Last Claret, I was so exhausted I almost collapsed at work. Megan looked stunned. She came over and gave me a hug. "No offense, dear, but I'm going to need your little sperm in a few months." At that moment, Clara returned and ruined the mood. "Sorry, Ethan, but the girls and I are heading to a Tupperware party soon." I hurried out, feeling that there are some things a person should never witness. Megan walked me to the door. I pleaded, "Please come home, Megan. I miss you." 3 more weeks, Ethan, and then we'll talk," she said, looking very uncomfortable as she spoke, almost as if she hated saying no. But any hope I had was dashed when she added, "Why don't you take a month off from overtime to recover? We'll need that money, Ethan." I glanced at the flowers and candy she had carelessly tossed aside and walked away. My weekly visit was the following Tuesday night. Julia was in the shower again. I made sure not to make the same mistake as last time and sat down on the couch. Clara was dressed and standing uncomfortably close. Julia came downstairs, also dressed. She looked a bit embarrassed and said, "You really should have called. If you had, you would have known we were leaving." Being kicked out like that was humiliating, and I could swear I heard giggling from behind the door. I promised myself that would be the last time I'd put myself through this kind of embarrassment. For the rest of the week, neither of us called. That Sunday, I worked out in the backyard with some homemade weight equipment I'd put together. It felt good to be getting back to my old strength. Suddenly, I felt someone's arms wrap around me from behind, and a body press against my sweaty back. I was grateful for the human contact after 2 weeks of solitude. But then I froze when Clara's voice came close to my ear. "Sorry, handsome," I just couldn't resist. Shocked, I turned around, disentangling myself. Trying to mask my embarrassment more than anything, I offered her coffee. I noticed she was wearing one of her usual provocative outfits, which did showcase some impressive cleavage. Inside, I sat on the edge of the kitchen table, but Clara pulled a chair close enough that our feet touched. We made small talk, which isn't exactly my forte. "Aren't you going to ask how Megan's doing?" "No. She's made it clear that it's none of my business." Clara smiled. "You know, she's a bit upset. She was hoping you'd be begging and pleading by now." "I'm sorry, Clara, but that's not my style. I asked her out when I first came to see you. She declined, saying she already had plans. I noticed she never called or tried to reschedule. I'm unsure about this separation, so I'm just going to wait. Either she'll come back, or our marriage will end." I expected Clara to be alarmed by my words, but she just smiled and put her hand on my leg. It felt like some sort of test. I knew I could handle it since I wasn't emotionally attracted to Clara, though her body was another story. I saw another button on her top had mysteriously come undone. You know, I've always admired you and Megan as a couple, she said. Do you really need to be sure of your love to let her date other guys, or are you just pretending not to care? My blood ran cold. We hadn't discussed dating during this one-sided separation, but my reminder of "don't forget you're married" should have been a given. Without saying another word, I walked out of the house and got into my car. Arriving at Clara's place, I stormed inside. From the kitchen window, I saw Megan sunbathing on the terrace in a bikini. Determinedly, I marched towards the exit. "Megan, what's this nonsense Clara's been telling me about you dating?" I demanded. "I'm not dating, Ethan," Megan replied. "We met a couple of guys last Tuesday at a club and did a bit of dancing." Megan insisted that meeting those guys wasn't a date, just a casual encounter. I expected her to show some concern, but instead, she seemed resolute. I asked, "So what happened last night, dear?" Nothing much. Just more dancing." "Nothing inappropriate," she replied. "We didn't kiss or anything. They bought us drinks and we danced a bit. Since when is it okay for a married woman to dance with other men when her husband isn't around? I guess you just casually mentioned that you might meet them again in the future. If you do, it'll definitely be a date, and definitely inappropriate." Megan seemed unfazed. "Look, Megan, this whole separation thing is really hurting me. I don't even understand what it's supposed to be. Why not skip the next 2 weeks and come home now? I really miss you." "No, Ethan, not yet. I think we'll be back together in a month." "My feelings for you haven't come back yet." She looked strangely puzzled, like she was saying things she didn't truly mean. This was the most confusing of her recent irrational behaviors. I stared at her for a moment before deciding to leave. As I was heading out, she added, "You could ask me out on another date. You might have better luck this time." Without pausing or looking back, I left. "Or you could ask me out on a date. You know where I live." Starting Monday, Megan began calling home every night. The calls were brief and awkward, as if she was just checking to see if I was around. I didn't like that. On Clara night, she called at 7 o'clock. I had forwarded the home phone to my cell, as I had set up, and I could clearly hear music in the background. As I almost reached Clara's house and noticed Megan's car was gone, I spotted it in the parking lot of a bar. I watched from outside as Megan and Clara sat alone in a booth. A few moments later, 2 more girls joined them. I vaguely recognized one as Emily, another friend of Megan's, but the other girl was unfamiliar. I watched as Emily introduced the stranger to Megan and Clara. While they were chatting, I moved to a far corner of the bar and eavesdropped. Emily said, "You're crazy, Megan. From what you've told me, Ethan is way more romantic than my husband." A stranger chimed in, "Yeah, I agree. I'd kill for even half of what you say you're getting from your ex." Clara added, "Don't you think Megan deserves better? Just look at her." "She's beautiful," Emily replied. "I don't know, but it sounds like a dangerous game." "How do you feel about him, Megan?" "It sounds like he's wasting a lot of time working. You keep him in bed all Sunday and keep him satisfied?" "If you were mine, that's exactly what I'd be doing." Megan's response was soft and inaudible to me, continuing for several minutes. When she finished, Emily started again. "And you're making this guy fight for you." A jukebox started playing, and the bar began filling up. I wondered how long it would be before these guys showed up. Over the next hour, I watched numerous men approach the girls, only to leave disappointed. Then, a stranger approached the bar, heading towards my corner. I made space for her. She smiled and ordered 4 drinks. Up close, she was quite attractive, short brown curly hair and an easy smile. As she waited for her drinks, she turned to me and asked, "Do you come here often?" "Hey, that should be my question," I replied. "Well, you were too slow," she said with a grin. We chatted casually until her drinks arrived. I noticed her glance at my ring finger. I usually didn't wear my ring due to work. She surprised me by saying, "Look, the conversation at my desk is awful. Mind if I use you as an excuse to leave?" What? How could I mind a beautiful girl talking to me? Well, I must warn you, I'm married, but my marriage is in trouble. That's why I'm here. Oh, wow. Thanks for being honest. I'm just looking for some company, so if it's okay with you, I'd like to chat. She gave me a mischievous smile and was back in 2 minutes. For the next hour and a half, we talked easily. I kept an eye out to make sure we weren't being watched. I saw a man take an empty seat at the girls' table and start buying drinks. Rachel was delightful company, and we had a great time. At 11:30, Emily appeared. I didn't see her until it was too late to hide. Her face showed vague recognition, and I could tell she knew she had seen me before but couldn't place me. I smiled as Rachel introduced us. Emily whispered something in Rachel's ear, which I guessed was a comment about me. Emily said, "You're right, he is cute." Megan offered us a ride home. I noticed Rachel hesitating. "I really have to go anyway." "It was nice talking to you, Rachel." I kissed her on the cheek. She blushed and walked away. Halfway to the door, she returned and handed me a business card. Without a word, but with a knowing smile, she walked out. I watched as the 3 girls left the bar, leaving only Clara and the guy behind at the table. I decided to give them a 5-minute head start before heading to the parking lot. Just 2 minutes later, my cell phone rang. The caller ID showed it was Megan, calling from the home phone that I'd forwarded. After exchanging pleasantries, she asked about the music she could hear in the background. "Are we having a party at the house?" she asked. "I'm at the bar, Megan," I replied. "I've been spending the evening with a really attractive woman." "What the hell, Ethan? Who gave you permission to do that?" Megan demanded. "Are you saying you're the only one who's allowed to have fun tonight? Are you saying I'm not allowed to?" "Of course you are," I said. "But as long as we're married, I expect you to act like it." "Didn't you call me from the bar?" she asked. Yeah. And I guess those guys from last time didn't show up, did they?" "No, maybe they did," she answered, sounding a bit evasive. "Look, Ethan, I told you I'm not dating." It was almost amusing to see her so flustered. "Look, Megan, let's stop pretending and go back to how things were before. Come home. I'll meet you there." There was a long pause before she finally said, "No, I'm sorry, Ethan. I'm just not ready." "Okay, then come over for the night," I suggested. "No, sorry, Ethan. I'll call you later," she said, and the line went dead. I sat there, mulling over everything I had learned that evening. I didn't have a clear picture yet, but I had a strong feeling that things were spiraling out of control. On Saturday afternoon, Clara showed up again. I asked her directly what her friend was up to, but she gave a weak denial. This time, when she tried to kiss me, I was prepared. I kept her at arm's length. "What the hell are you playing at, Clara? I'm married to your best friend, for crying out loud." "That's for now, Ethan," she said. "I just wanted to see if I had a shot after Megan left you." Her response sounded so contrived it was almost laughable, but it confirmed my initial suspicions. "So, if Megan leaves me, you're interested, Clara?" "Of course, Ethan." "I really hope you're up for it," she said. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, I showed her the door. Clara was reluctant to leave, and I had to be blunt about how inappropriate her behavior was. "Are you and Megan going out again tonight?" I asked. "Yeah, I guess so," she replied, which was our final farewell. I called Rachel next. She seemed pleased to hear from me but said she couldn't make it that night. She suggested we meet up on Tuesday. I felt it was important to remind her of my current situation. "Rachel, just so you know, we'll only be friends for now. I'm in the middle of a pretty confusing personal situation. I enjoyed our time together last night and promise to treat you with the utmost respect until things are sorted out," She told me she enjoyed our conversation too and that her situation was a bit complicated. She ended the call by saying she was looking forward to Tuesday. Monday morning marked the start of a new routine with Julia. She began calling me at 6 a.m. every weekday, around 6 p.m. when I usually got home, and again before bed. She claimed it was because she missed me, but my requests for her to come back were met with resistance. It was obvious that I was being put through some sort of test. On Tuesday, Rachel greeted me at the front door of her apartment, looking stunning. As soon as we were seated at the restaurant, I started the conversation. "So, do you want to explain why your personal life is a bit of a mess?" "Yeah, her name is Olivia," Rachel said. It turned out Olivia was Rachel's 3-year-old daughter. Her father had decided that family life was too serious, so Rachel's mom was looking after her that day. To divert the conversation from my personal issues, I shifted the topic. "When we were at the bar, you mentioned that the conversation at your table was pretty awful. What was that all about?" "Oh, that," she said with a sigh. "It was just terrible conversation with some stupid people. There was a woman named Megan who had recently separated from her husband. But she was trying to get him back by making him jealous. They were about to have kids, and she broke up with him to make him fight for her, be more romantic and all that. The sad part was, he was already doing a lot for her. He brought her flowers every week, went on dates every month, and spoiled her in every way he could. Despite working late every Saturday, he would get up early on Sundays to make her breakfast. Last year, he even took her on a surprise cruise. I would have been thrilled to get half of that from my ex. It made my friend Emily sad too. She doesn't get any of that. Some women just don't realize how good they have it, I guess, and it gets even sillier," Rachel continued. Before they broke up, she was doing everything she could to make him jealous. Like coming home later and later from girls' nights out, deliberately wearing men's cologne. Heck, one time she even got a pair of panties from her friend Clara, who only had them from her lover, so you can imagine what kind they were. She left them on the bedroom floor, and her husband didn't notice a thing. I think he's either incredibly naive or just so in love with her that he overlooks everything. When nothing worked, she and Clara came up with this idea of a trial divorce. They thought he'd get desperate and fight hard for her, but the guy didn't budge. When he didn't react as they had hoped, they decided to escalate things. She stopped calling him, and he responded by ignoring her. Then she had her friend plant the idea in his head that she was seeing someone else. Despite all their efforts, the poor guy remained unresponsive. To be honest, I admire his reaction. It's exactly what I would do if someone treated me that way. What was truly heartbreaking was when Emily asked Megan how much effort she had actually put into the marriage. At that moment, it seemed like Megan realized just how one-sided her relationship had been. You'd think that would make her reconsider her actions, but it didn't. Now they've really boxed themselves in, unsure of how to move forward, all because a proud person wouldn't play by their rules. Well, she could always go back, confess everything, and try to restore some normalcy. Yes, that's what I would do, and I suspect it's what she really wants to do. Also, I think her friend might be manipulating the situation. Clara gave Megan a couple of very cryptic looks on Claire. Maybe Clara is trying to drive a wedge between them to snag the husband for herself. You might be onto something, I agreed. That would fit with what I've seen, though it would make Clara seem like a cold, manipulative person. If you were in that husband's shoes, what would you do? Well, I'm not sure how their relationship has evolved, but my instinct would be to dump the crazy, disrespectful partner and move on to someone who actually appreciates me, she said. At that point, our food arrived, and we shifted to more neutral topics. I couldn't believe how at ease I felt with Rachel. When the waitress cleared our empty glasses, my conscience got the better of me. You know, Rachel, everything you've said makes me think you're a genuinely decent person with healthy values. Thank you, that's very kind, Rachel replied. Do you consider me a decent person? Without a moment's hesitation, Rachel responded, I pride myself on being a good judge of character, and I'm confident that you're a very good man." I was feeling a bit nervous. Reaching across the table, I took her hands, probably in a vain attempt to keep her from running away. Taking a deep breath, I decided to be upfront. "Please forgive me, Rachel. I've been a bit dishonest. My excuse is that I'm feeling very confused right now and will do almost anything to clear up that confusion. I really respect you, so I want to be honest. My name is Ethan, and I've been married to a woman named Megan for 6 years. 4 weeks ago, she demanded a trial separation despite my objections. A new friend suggested I should just end things with her. Given the extreme disrespect she's shown and the pain she's caused, I was already leaning toward that. You are right, despite treating her like a queen, I only now see how little she contributed in return." I watched as a range of emotions flickered across Rachel's face, eventually settling on horror. She clamped her mouth shut with a clenched fist. "Oh my God, did I just call your wife a stupid bitch?" "Well, she is a stupid bitch," I said. "But what's telling is that your first reaction was to worry about how you insulted me, not how I might have lied to you. That just reinforces what a wonderful person you are. Can you forgive me?" "Yes, you used me a bit, but I understand why," she said. "Is that why you spoke to me on Claret night? Were you looking for a spy?" "Hey, you were talking to me too, remember?" I said. "Can I count on your friendship while I sort this out?" "Sure, Ethan. But friendship is all I can offer. I don't want to be involved in ruining your marriage, thank you. Your friendship is exactly what I need right now. From my perspective, we had a perfectly happy marriage with no indication that Julia was unhappy. One Thursday, she came home from work and announced she wanted a trial separation. She was about to leave, but I demanded some explanation. Yet, the confusion remained. Since I invested all my energy into work and Megan, I don't really have any close friends. Is there any chance you can help me fix this? I don't know, Rachel. A part of me thinks I'd look like a complete fool taking her back after how she's treated me. Plus, after talking to you, I see just how one-sided my marriage was. I'm a bit embarrassed to admit this. We shifted back to more neutral topics by mutual agreement. We had a pleasant evening, which ended when Rachel wanted to go home. I suggested she think it over and contact me if she wanted to. I told her I'd understand if I never heard from her again. The next day, as I walked to the grocery store, I was approached by someone from a coffee shop a little further down the street. Turning around, I saw Megan, Clara, and another girl standing with their backs to me. As I got closer, my heart sank when I recognized Emma Lyra. She gave the game away by shouting, "You," when she saw me. The expected call from Megan didn't come until 9:30 p.m., and by then, I was nearly asleep and not in the best mood. "Ethan, didn't I warn you not to spy on me?" Megan's voice was cold. "Your actions show a lack of trust and extreme disrespect. Look at it from my perspective, Megan," I said. "You pull this stunt and refuse to explain what's going on. Don't you think I'd try to figure it out for myself? It was a clear violation of our rules." "Ethan, your rules, Megan," I replied. "Darling, I just don't know what to make of all this. This trial separation isn't turning out the way I thought it would. I'm not sure I love you as much as I need to," Megan said. "I think we should extend this separation for another month or two and see what happens." She paused, clearly waiting for me to react explosively. I remained silent. Unless she'd had a sudden change of heart since last Claret, this was just another tactic to make me try harder. What's the saying? If at first you don't succeed, try again. Personally, I preferred the mining version. If at first you don't succeed, try using more explosives. Just dragging out the separation and confirming her lowered opinion of me seemed pretty pathetic. But there was more to it. "Okay, Ethan, I didn't want to do this, but I think it's only fair. I want to see other guys. Maybe if I do that, I'll remember how good you are and rekindle my old feelings." She paused again, clearly expecting a dramatic outburst. This time, my silence was genuine. I was simply at a loss for words. When I finally could speak, I chose to stay quiet. I knew that whatever I said wasn't likely to fix anything. "Are you still there, Ethan?" she asked. I didn't answer. I considered telling her that I knew exactly what she was up to. If I laid everything out, she might come back, but the underlying issues would still be there. "Ethan," Megan's voice broke the silence. "I think your decision would be a huge mistake. Let me be clear, if you start dating or act in any way that's inappropriate for a married woman, like meeting a guy more than once, dancing, touching, or kissing another man, I will consider it as you giving up on our marriage. Am I being clear enough? I don't know if we can fix this marriage even if you come back tonight, but I'm willing to try. Please come back to where you belong, Megan." The silence was hers this time. "I don't think you're in a position to set terms, Ethan. You don't own me. I think I deserve a chance to find the romance and companionship I've missed over the past month." At this point, I was starting to think Megan had completely lost her mind. Did I really need to point out that she was missing romance because she had been avoiding it? "So, Megan, you're insisting on opening up our marriage?" I asked. "You've never given me a reason for this separation that made any sense. The closest I can come to understanding it is that you're trying to make me work harder on our relationship." I dismissed that idea as too disrespectful. One benefit of this separation is that I've had time to reflect. I now realize that I've put far more effort into our relationship than you have. Another stretch of silence followed. When she finally spoke again, her voice was close to tears. It was as if she was following a plan that suddenly seemed deeply flawed. "I'm sorry, Ethan, but I've made up my mind." The buzzer signaled the end of our conversation and likely the end of our marriage. Rachel called on Thursday night, and I was immensely relieved to hear that she had forgiven me. She asked about the latest developments, claiming it was just as a friend. I updated her on my recent conversations with Julia, including my analysis of Julia's likely motives. "What are you going to do now, Ethan?" Rachel asked. "Just wait around and see how Julia messes up the marriage. That's pretty much the plan," I replied. "Do you want me to spy on her this weekend?" Rachel offered. "No, don't get involved in that," I said. "How about you find out where they're going and invite me to the same place?" "No, I'm not going to stoop to her level," Rachel said. "But it's a good idea. I'd like to see you this weekend." We negotiated for a while and decided on a Sunday picnic. Rachel didn't press me on why I wasn't available on Claret or Saturday. She seemed to understand. We talked for maybe 2 hours. Finding Megan and Clara on Claret wasn't difficult. They were at the same bar, which suggested one of two things. Either Megan thought I was too afraid to spy on her, or she was counting on me doing just that. I watched through the windows, feeling a bit ashamed of my actions. That night, Julia was on her best behavior. It was just her, Clara, and Emilira. They chatted until 10 p.m. Clara accepted several dance invitations, but Megan declined. Eventually, 2 persistent guys approached them, clearly interested in Megan and Clara. Emily left soon after, leaving the 3 women at the table. Throughout the evening, the girls kept glancing around the bar. I was surprised when Clara and Megan left alone at 11:30. I followed their cab to their house and waited until the lights went out. Saturday was a different story. Again, it was the same bar. This time, the same 2 guys were waiting and immediately engaged with Megan and Clara. At 8:05 p.m., my marriage was effectively over. When Clara left the table to dance with one of the guys, the other made his move. From where I stood, I saw him put his hand on Megan's leg. Despite my 5-minute grace period to see if she'd push him away, she looked around the bar at least 6 times. I walked into the bar. When she saw me approaching, she at least had the decency to push the guy's arm away. The look on Megan's face was smug as she began her first gambit. "Ethan, I warned you not to spy on me again." Her unfortunate victim, sensing my mood, stood up. Confront me or run, I'd never know. Ignoring all social niceties, I stepped in close, emphasizing the difference in our sizes, me at 6 feet 1 inch and him diminutive by comparison. With a low growl, I uttered the shortest phrase in the English language, "Get away." He ran. Keeping my eyes fixed on Megan's face, I sat down in the seat I had just vacated and pulled out a bundle of papers from my breast pocket. These are the papers for a mutually agreed divorce. I've already filled them out. All you need to do is sign them. I've also included a separate agreement for dividing our assets. I see no reason not to split everything 50-50. It makes sense for me to keep the house, since you've already moved out. I watched as her smug expression shifted to one of horror. I didn't wait for her to react further. I was desperate to hide the tears that threatened to spill from my eyes. Megan didn't say a word as I turned and left. Curiosity got the better of me, so I started looking out the window again. Megan was crying, tears streaming down her face. 2 minutes later, Clara returned, looking confused. When she saw the papers on the table, her face broke into a wide smile. For the next hour, I watched as Clara did most of the talking. After about 15 minutes, Megan had stopped crying, and by an hour later, she looked completely relaxed. It seemed Clara had managed to convince Megan that their scheme was still on track. I didn't sleep well that night. The final confrontation was still looming, and my mind wouldn't let go of the pain Megan had caused. I expected Clara's visit the next day but pretended I wasn't home when she arrived. I ignored several of her phone calls, and there was nothing from Megan. At 1:30 p.m., I knocked on Rachel's door. She took one look at the bouquet of red roses in my hand and hugged me tightly. "I was going to ask how you spent the last few days, but now I see," she said. Her perceptiveness was striking. Friends don't give each other roses, and I wouldn't have given them to her if I hadn't been halfway through my ordeal. She invited me in, and we approached an elderly lady. "Ethan, this is my mom, Grace." "Mom, this is my boyfriend, Ethan." I was momentarily speechless, but in a good way. I wondered how much Rachel had told her mother, but Grace solved that problem by asking, "So, is it over?" I briefed them on the recent events, adding my assumption that Julia hadn't taken the separation seriously. It took some more convincing to prove my seriousness. By breaking the rules, Julia had shown how much she disrespected me. Both Rachel and Grace saw my pain. Grace hugged me, offering comfort. Then, a little angel appeared in the room, Olivia, who had just finished her nap. I was introduced again. Olivia looked disappointed when Rachel explained that we were going out, despite Grace's assurances of how much fun she and Olivia would have. "Can't she come with us?" I whispered to Rachel. "Are you sure?" "I'm taking everything in a bag," Rachel replied. "That would be great. I'm torn about being away from her for a whole week, so I love spending the whole weekend with her." Olivia's face lit up with joy at the news. We had a wonderful day by the river. Rachel complained that she felt a bit left out, but her wide smile told me not to take it too seriously. I dropped both ladies off at home, where Grace treated me to dinner. I left with a gentle kiss on Rachel's cheek. When I got home, I saw that Megan must have been hiding a bit further down the road. I barely had time to open the front door before she pulled into the driveway. She left the engine running and got out, holding the papers I'd given her on Saturday. "Here you go, Ethan. Signed and witnessed. Good night." I was stunned as she walked back to her car. She jumped in, buckled up, and rolled down her window. "Now that I've figured out your little bluff, maybe you'll ask me out this week. I'm free on Wednesday." With those words, she drove away. Men are from Mars. Women are from Venus. I'm from Earth, and Megan seemed to be from some distant galaxy. If our relationship had been defined by screaming, it would have been some sort of bizarre, unsettling experience. The screaming began on Monday night. Clara was waiting for me in the driveway when I got home from work. Before I could react, she grabbed me and kissed me on the lips. I roughly pushed her away, yelling, "Listen, once and for all, I'm not the least bit interested in you, Clara." Any response she made was drowned out by the roar of the engine as Megan sprang from her hiding place. Clara noticed her approach and tried to run down the driveway as Megan sped toward her. She almost succeeded. No sooner had the car stopped than Megan threw open the door, knocking Clara over. Clara scrambled to her feet, but Megan's blow to her head sent her crashing down again. Megan's rage was palpable. Clara stayed down, which was a smart move considering the fury she was facing. Megan continued kicking her legs, her anger seemingly boundless. Finally, when Megan was exhausted but still seething, I took the risk of intervening and pulled her off Clara. At that moment, a police car happened to drive by, and things quickly spiraled. Megan and I were both handcuffed, and an ambulance was summoned for Clara. The officers questioned Megan first, and her screams were loud enough for me to hear from my cell. Eventually, they grew tired of her outbursts and moved her to a cell across from mine for her own cooling-off period. When it was my turn, I laid out the whole story. I tried to paint Megan's actions as part of a misguided attempt to test me, as if I owed her some explanation. After giving my side, I was released with a formal apology by 11 p.m. The next day, I went to work as usual. On my way home, I called Rachel. She invited me over for dinner again and mentioned Olivia's request. "Could you read me a bedtime story tonight?" I arrived home later than usual, having stopped by Clara's parents' house. I briefed them on their daughter's manipulation and our situation. They seemed unsurprised but agreed to speak with Clara about not pressing charges against Megan. When I finally made it home, Megan's car was parked in the garage. I walked into our master bedroom to find her suitcases on the bed. The shower was running. I called Rachel to cancel our dinner plans, and we discussed what Megan might do next. In hindsight, we both misjudged the situation. Megan came down the stairs, her usual confident demeanor intact. "What's for dinner, Ethan?" she asked cheerfully. I didn't respond. She walked over and planted herself directly in front of my chair. "I've decided to forgive you, Ethan. We've both acted a bit foolishly. Let's just move on." I'm back. When I finally managed to speak, my voice was filled with disbelief. "So, Megan, exactly how did I act foolishly, and what made you decide to forgive me?" Megan responded, "Well, the divorce was a low blow, but I knew you were bluffing the whole time." "What makes you think it was a bluff?" I asked. That's what Clara said. Megan's confidence began to falter. The reality of the situation seemed to dawn on her. Her face lost its color, and she sank onto the coffee table, visibly shaken by the realization. This performance lasted for several minutes. "Is this it?" Megan finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. "We're breaking up, aren't we? You weren't bluffing about the divorce?" I shook my head slowly. "No, Megan, we're not breaking up. You made your choice. I've done everything I could for you. What did I get? You walked away, leaving me lost and alone. I tried to warn you. Didn't I say this was a gamble? How much clearer could I have been? After all the love and effort I put in, I deserved at least some respect and loyalty. Did I get that? No, I got discarded, disrespected, and left confused." Megan's expression hardened. "Did you ever see how unbalanced our efforts were? You let someone like Clara manipulate you into thinking you could find something better. Well, guess what? I'm done with that. I'm moving forward." Her shock was palpable. "So, you're really not going to take me back?" "No, Megan," I said firmly. "We have signed divorce papers. The disrespect you've shown me throughout this ordeal, not to mention the threats, has been too much. When you threw me out, I was devastated. But I've moved on. Megan's face went even paler. What do you mean, Ethan? I've met someone else, I confessed. She started as a friend, someone who helped me through this tough time. You left me, Megan. I'm sorry, but you took a risk and lost. I'm starting a new chapter in my life, and I'm doing so with a clear conscience.